All right, let's get right into it. Now, the first thing we want to talk about is why the fuck was this film made and why was it a doomed project from the start? Now, Dan Aykroyd had originally conceived of Ghostbusters 3 for many years. However, he was never able to get the project off the ground. Sony Pictures finally picked up on it because they needed a new cash cow to make some money. So, head of Sony Pictures, Amy Pascal, picked it up not only to make the company money, but also to push her own feminist agenda. So, when you enter into or embark upon any particular endeavor, but you have spurless motivations, you have a misguided look at the way you want to approach it, then you're going to reap what you sow. The film is going to be, or any project is going to, if it fails, it is entirely your fault. So she comes in, she has a feminist agenda. She's on the record as saying, Amy Pascal, that she wants to see more female-dominated, female-led films. And then she used all the tools at her disposal as the head of Sony Pictures to go ahead and bring in a director that's sympathetic to that, Paul Feig. She pushed Ivan Reitman basically into the background. He's credited on the film, but he's not really involved with it. So it's kind of bullshit. And then throughout the film, there are any number of references that either make men look foolish or make women look heroic, but it's all intentional. It's all in your face. It's all direct. There's nothing progressive about it. It's supposed to be progressive. It's not. There's nothing progressive about just gender swapping an entire cast from a film. What would be progressive would be like the Extreme Ghostbusters cartoon, where you had a Caucasian, you had an African American, you had a female, and you had an individual that was handicapped in a wheelchair. That's progressive. This film is not progressive. Now, so don't listen to the naysayers. And if you don't like this film, it doesn't make you a misogynist. You're just not a fucking idiot. So, Amy Pascal, she hijacked this film, this entire series. Cash cow, feminist agenda. That's all you need to know. Now, what made the original film great? Let's talk about Ghostbusters 1984. Y'all know the theme. You know about Ray Parker Jr. You know how hot this film was. What made it fantastic? Two things. One, the cast. You had some of the greatest comedians at their comedic height that were involved with this production of this film. 1984, they all came together. It was a perfect confluence of talent and writing. They riffed off each other. Many of the best moments of Ghostbusters 1984, the classic, were ad-libbed lines that the guys threw together in fun. That's how much talent you had. So you had a great crew, a great cast, you had great writing, and everyone working together to make it a perfect film. And I do consider it a perfect film. I consider it the best comedy ever made. You can debate that if you like, but that's how I feel. Now, but the second part is even more important than the interaction of the cast and the way that they all work together. The second part, and more importantly, is that Ghostbusters, the original, was in 3 parts: a comedy, a horror, and an action film. And it did all 3 perfectly. It had horror. There was an ambiance of impending doom in that film. You also had action. There were great action. It was not dedicated to action, but it had action interspersed in the middle of it. So when you put all that together, you get a great film. So now let's talk about the new film. Let's break it down. Now, first of all, the film is rubbish. I mean, it's not the worst film I've ever seen, and I'm not upset that I saw it. I didn't pay money to see it because I'm not going to support the feminist agenda that was being pushed. I don't want your feminist propaganda. And it has so many flaws, the film does. But it's fairly enjoyable. But what we're going to talk mostly about, let's start with something positive. As I said, it's important from the original that the cast really have a connection, that they vibe, they have a rapport, and you have that in this film. A couple of the women worked on SNL together. A couple of them were in the film Bridesmaids, which is Paul Feig's big directorial film. And so these girls, they definitely vibe, they definitely riffed. Let's talk about the characters. Melissa McCarthy, she is what she is in this film. She plays the exact same character she always does. You like her shit or you don't. Either you're like, that's some good shit, or it's not. Some people like her, some people hate her. I'm in the middle. I like some of her shit, not some of the other. Okay, let's talk about Kristen Wiig. Kristen Wiig, you know what you're getting. You're getting a kind of shy, clueless, quirky sort of individual. She basically plays herself. She's one of the bright spots in the film. She's good. So I enjoy Kristen Wiig in the film, but she doesn't really step out of character. You have, of course, Kate McKinnon. Kate McKinnon is there to represent the lesbian side of the feminist propaganda. That's irrelevant to me. All of their propaganda is bullshit, but she does a good job in the film. She's a very polarizing character. Some people love her, some people hate her. I think she should win a Razzie for just hamming it the fuck up. I mean, she really hams it up in this entire film. She probably goes a little overboard. It's a little too much from her, but that's okay. She still does a good job. The pistol licking is gratuitous and unnecessary, but she's hot. So what can I tell you? Now, and then of course Leslie Jones, whose character actually surprised me. She's actually very likable. You couldn't tell that by the trailers because she just seemed like the typical stereo ghetto black woman stereotype. But actually, no, there's a little bit in there, but she's actually very likable. I enjoyed her performance. I don't necessarily like her style of loud, screaming comedy, but she did well, except for the one scene that's ridiculous, but we'll get to that. Okay, now, the plot. The plot is pretty terrible. Why? Because it adds nothing to Ghostbusters. First of all, you shouldn't entirely reboot or remake the Ghostbusters. You shouldn't just do that and then try to have callbacks for nostalgia purposes. Like, oh, look, guys, like, there's the firehouse. Oh, you remember that. Here's the original theme song at the beginning of the movie. You remember that. Look, the Ghostbusters logo. You remember that. Don't just do callbacks. Have it happen in the same universe. Acknowledge the first film. Why the fuck would you not do that? You generally, in Hollywood, you will reboot or remake a film because you feel like it's at a dead end as a property, and you need to resuscitate it. You need to rejuvenate it. However, that's not the case here. You don't need to do that with this film. You just needed to take the original and add to it. That would have been a better strategy, a better tactic. They didn't take that tactic. It was foolish. They did a remake, reboot. It sucks. Now, so the story is rubbish. You've got a guy who's basically just a sociopath and a loser who was bullied as a kid. I was bullied. So he's your main bad guy. Obviously, he's incredibly weak and ineffective in that role. There's no explanation of how he's actually building any of these devices that are creating this ghost apocalypse. He's basically a little kid who's sad and is taking down the world, So it's bullshit. He's a bullshit villain. Doesn't work. And anytime your villain is weak, your movie's going to be weak. It starts out, the premise is pretty good initially because you've got basically two old friends who are reunited, the Abby Yates character and the Aaron Gilbert character, and they are reunited, and they end up with the idea of chasing after ghosts after a couple of chance encounters in the film, and then so essentially they discover that an individual is trying to create a ghost apocalypse. Now, the movie falls apart a little bit because you don't actually see, you don't get that feeling of impending doom. It's not that ominous feeling that you got from the first film. I never got that feeling. Part of it is the Nickelodeon ghosts that look ridiculous. Part of it is that, the Ghostbusters don't even bust ghosts in this film. They trap a single ghost, which is then released by one of the Ghostbusters. So the ghosts look silly. Some of the performances are weak, like cameos from the original cast. Certainly Bill Murray's cameo is weak. You can tell he doesn't give a fuck about being there. So the story itself is nothing original. There are no twists or plot twists or any sort of anything that would be a hook that would be like, oh man, I can't believe that happened. None of that. So it fails on that level. It fails CGI-wise because CGI ghosts look ridiculous. It looks more like a Nickelodeon production, like I'm watching Goosebumps or some shit. Now, I'm not hating on Goosebumps, but that's not what we're here for. How can your effects from 1984 be more impressive than from 2016? If that's the case, it's a blunder. Like the Dragon Ghost at the concert scene. It's terrible. Like I said, spoilers, concert scene, Dragon Ghost, it looks terrible. It looks ridiculous. Honestly, that's the most Nickelodeon thing in the film. It's ridiculous. Now, the girls do have, as I said, they have a good rapport, and there's good interplay. But unfortunately, the whole film is chock full of jokes. Like every line is supposed to be a joke almost. It pulls you out of the atmosphere and eliminates all tension of the film. You have no tension because every single moment is some sort of joke. It's one-liners. It's SNL skit. Essentially one extended SNL skit, and that's a huge fail. The original film had jokes, but they were perfectly timed. They were very natural and flowing. It didn't feel like they were attempting to be jokey. Where this film, they are. You can tell that they're trying to be joking. And a lot of the jokes are just man-hater jokes. Like jokes about vaginas, jokes about queefing. Chris Hemsworth's character as the receptionist is a complete idiot who covers his eyes when there's a loud sound, which makes no fucking sense. Who can't reach the phone because it's in the tank, because he doesn't reach into the fish tank. He just keeps trying to put his hand through the glass. The guy's a complete fucking moron. So you basically emasculated men. Like I said, the women, they make all sort of jokes that are at the expense of men. There's the final boss, spoilers, the giant logo that's been given life and come to life and is attacking the city, aka Marshmallow Godzilla style. This particular individual, they actually shoot him with the proton packs in the dick. They're shooting him in the junk. Kind of like, haha, look what we do to men. And then, if that's not enough, as an outro, you learn that Kate McKinnon's character, Dr. Jillian Holtzman, actually devises another device in this film called the Nutcracker. Yeah, we get it. Women. This is all about women, and it's supposed to be empowering, except for it's so forced and so blatant and obvious and so agenda-driven that you can't really enjoy it. Here's the idea. When it comes to empowering women, make a believable, living, breathing, relatable character, and people will gravitate toward them, whether they're male, female, it doesn't matter what their skin color is. They just have to be relatable and believable. If you think about it, we love Ellen Ripley from Aliens. We love Sarah Connor from Terminator series. Not because anyone forced them to be badass. They just were, because they were written correctly. These women aren't really written correctly. It's all, let's walk around and act like we're men. As pointed out by Rebel Media on YouTube, don't try to turn your women into men. That's not the way to go. And the women themselves don't even react in fear to the ghost in this film, which is another fucking huge problem. Nobody's afraid. Like, why should we have any sense of foreboding if nobody in this film is afraid? None of the girls are. Nobody's scared. It's ridiculous. And even more man-hating, their receptionist, Kevin, is out getting a sandwich while they're fighting ghosts. As if to say, men are lazy, we just want to sit on the couch and drink beer and have sandwiches. And he's designed a logo in the film that was like a ghost with boobs. Because men love boobs, because boobs. Now, I'm not saying I don't love boobs. I'm not saying that isn't sometimes on my mind, but it's not the only thing as implied by this film. Now, so that fails. Something good about the film that's pretty good is the new devices. There are some new devices that are made for attacking ghosts. It's good to introduce new things to a Ghostbusters or any property. It adds to the excitement, and a lot of times Hollywood takes a lot of shit for not adding to a story or adding to a series or a concept. They did that here with Dr. Jillian Holtzman making a lot of new devices. There's even one that's basically the wood chipper. If you've seen Fargo, it's the wood chipper. The ghost gets sucked in and it's just, for whatever reason, just completely dismembered. Just like Steve Buscemi's character in Fargo. So, I didn't personally care for the devices. I didn't need them, but I see the merit of having new gadgets. I think that's pretty cool. One thing I didn't like about the film is that there's unbelievable amounts of completely bullshit lingo and terminology and pseudoscientific explanations for things. It's basically all complete babble. Do not listen to anything they try to say that sounds even remotely scientific, because it's babble, it's gibberish. Clearly the writers, the director, the actors themselves didn't have any fucking idea what they were talking about. I could debunk and dispute basically everything. It'd take me a whole nother video, because it's ridiculous the things that they're saying in this film that sound silly. Also, you never get a sense really that these women, the Ghostbusters, are that intelligent, because in the writing industry, there's an adage that says, show, don't tell. In other words, show us something. Don't just tell us how smart someone is. Show us. You don't get that in this film. You basically get the girls are super smart. Like, you never see Jillian Holtzman actually showing you how she builds things. She can just build a bunch of shit. Watch the beginning of the film from the 1980s called Short Circuit. If you watch the beginning, you see how Johnny Five was basically constructed, and then later in the film, you see Johnny Five actually construct a robot of his model type, and you get to see how it's done. So you get the feeling the engineers in that movie are really engineers. You don't get that here. Also, Kristen Wiig's character, Erin, she is supposed to be a college professor in physics. You don't see that. You don't see how she really actually is that intelligent because there can be no examples of it. She's just supposed to be brilliant. So that's a failing. Another huge issue with this film is that it's way heavy in the second part on action. I like action, and I think the action's fairly well done, but the last 30 minutes are just straight action. And Ghostbusters is an action film, and it is an action series, but it's not entirely action. It's not, say, it's not Commando. It's not Predator. You know, it has other elements, mostly comedic and horrific. So you shouldn't play it as a straight action film. Now, I understand maybe that's what the audiences today would want to see, but they basically turned it into an action film. I don't agree with that. I don't think it should have been. But you almost have to do that when the story is so simplistic. I mean, it's a guy who wants to cause an apocalypse. Let's stop him. There are no twists and no turns. It's supposed to be a twist with the possession aspect, but that's one of the worst scenes in the film, is the whole above the Chinese restaurant in the Ghostbusters laboratory, the possessions. First you see Abby Yates, Melissa McCarthy's character, become possessed, and then after her you see the receptionist Kevin, he becomes possessed. But that whole scene really doesn't work. It's just incredibly over the top. It doesn't seem believable at all. It doesn't feel right. That's not saying Ghostbusters that can't be possession, because in Ghostbusters 2, Dan Aykroyd's character was possessed, Ray Stantz was possessed, so possession does exist. But the way it's handled is kind of silly, especially with the way that the jokes are. It's very jokey. The Exorcist gag, come on, man. I mean, it's like you're watching this scary movie series. It's ridiculous. The Exorcist gag was horribly, horribly outdated. Not both of them. Both the power of Patty compels you and the Melissa McCarthy head spinning around. That's already been parodied in parody films. So that was a poor decision on their part. Nobody liked that shit. The concert scene wasn't very good. The ghosts. These are Ghostbusters, and in the original film, 1984, there's a whole montage showing the Ghostbusters actually busting ghosts. I mean, they have to pay their dues. They have to bust ghosts. They have to pay their dues before they fight these end bosses, if you will, in video game terminology. Before they fight the end boss, they got to fight all of these ghosts and trap all of these ghosts and really establish themselves. In this film, the new Ghostbusters, they don't establish themselves. They trap one ghost and then they let it go to try to prove to one random skeptic that ghosts really exist. That's bad writing, and it's not like the original, and it's not great. And one final thing I would say is the soundtrack's pretty terrible, because the new Ghostbusters theme that you only hear once or twice in the film, thank God, is by Fall Out Boy featuring Missy Elliott. We're talking about artists that were relevant 10, 12 years ago. I mean, who the fuck cares? And it's not even good. Like, if you bring back an old artist and it's good, okay. But the new film is the new song, the new theme song by Fall Out Boy and Missy Elliott is incredibly anachronistic and does not need to be in this film. You may as well have just used Ray Parker Jr.'s semi-stolen song. Of course, there was a big thing about that. But just look at the Huey Lewis in the News and I Want a New Drug if you want to learn more. But so in the end, should you watch this film? Should you pay money to watch this film? I wouldn't encourage you to, because you're giving in to this agenda, this feminist agenda that's been propagated. Sony Pictures was a real ass about this film. They were deleting negative comments from their website and only leaving up misogynistic comments, the 1% that was out there. Paul Feig has come out in the media multiple times basically calling the fans idiots and not knowing what the fuck they're talking about and not knowing their shit. So he's been an ass about it. The cast has been an ass about it. not the original cast that did cameos. But the new cast has been kind of jerks about it. So you've got the feminist agenda. You've got the fact that it's a classic film that didn't really need to be rebooted or remade. Maybe added to the legacy like a Ghostbusters 3 would do, but certainly not an entirely fresh beginning. So you didn't need that. You didn't need the agenda. You don't need all the man-hating jokes. You don't need the fact that the two men in the film are kind of lousy and worthless. You don't need the fact that the girls are basically doing a extended SNL skit full of jokes that more or less miss. A few of them I smirked at, but for the most part they all missed. So don't pay your money to see this, I would say. If you have the means to pirate it, I would do so. But don't spend money to see it. If you feel like you must, try to do it in this fashion. Try to enter into the film and consider it to be an entity of its own. Don't look at it as a Ghostbusters film per se, in terms of the series Ghostbusters, in terms of the first original films, the first two films, and the cartoon series, which are actually pretty faithful to the whole Ghostbusters franchise. Don't look at it as a piece of the franchise. Look at it as a standalone film taken in a vacuum. And if you watch it with that mentality, you will probably enjoy it. If you go in expecting it to be something great in terms of Ghostbusters, the series and the franchise as it exists and as we know and love it, you're gonna find that it fails miserably. You're going to be miserable. So I hope you like this review. I want to thank all you guys for listening. If you have any other questions or comments, let me know. If you want to like the video, please do that. If you want to subscribe to my channel, please do that. Thank you guys for your time, and I'm out. Peace.